Good afternoon and evening, everyone. Good to see a lot of faces here today. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 4:30 p.m. on March 26, 2026. First item is the disclosure of pecuniary interests. Any members of the committee have any interests they need to disclose? Not seeing any. Next item we have to attend to is the adoption of the previous minutes. I would ask for a mover and a seconder for those. Moved by Glenn and seconded by Dan. That the minutes dated February 19th, 2026 of the Agriculture Property Standards Working Group be adopted as circulated. And are there any questions throughout those minutes? Not seeing any, and all in favor of that. And that passes through. Nothing under correspondence and business of the working group, item 5.1. Mr. Wermier is supposed to be here, I believe, to discuss some items, so we'd welcome him up if he is.
Do I turn this on here? So it's already on. Okay. Yeah, I'm Bob Weirmeyer. I am a co-vice president of Ontario Landowners Association. I'm also president of Saugeen Regional Landowner Association. Uh,
Uh, my name is Stefanos Karatopoulos. I'm also a governor with the Ontario Landowners Association.
Yeah, the reason I actually inquired to see if we could speak here is I've been watching the videos of the previous meetings, and just a few things that I'd like to clear up. A little bit about myself. I've been raised on a farm, been farming right up to mad cow, and that pretty well stopped me from doing that. But with the Landowners Association, we've run into quite a few things, property standards, bylaws against farms, and just where do you draw the line? I guess, the Farming and Food Production Protection Act really doesn't identify a normal farm practice. And I'd have heard that from these meetings too, that where's the definition? What I'd like to really address is what's a normal farm? This is a big thing that really stops you from having a normal farm practice set out. You have your chicken barns and you got your beef feedlots, you got pig barns. It's a whole different area than what the cow calf operation is, the small family farm, the hobby farm, the Amish, or it's a whole different setup. So how do you really put down a normal farm practice? The first speaker you had talked about, I guess that was from AFRA, that, yeah, the best way to do it's take it to the farm tribunal. And again, we're faced with the thing of the people that are picked for the tribunal. What kind of farming are they used to? How do you differentiate between the hobby farmer, the small guy who's just trying to get started? That's why there's no definition of a normal farm practices. There's so many different things in there that pretty hard to mark down. It would take too many pieces of paper to say, well, this is normal for here, this is normal for there, that's normal for here. So that's really what I was concerned about, is trying to look at the broad spectrum of the farming operations. It's just about indefinable what one person is used to doing. My parents grew up through the Depression, so yeah, they always saved everything. That's how I grew up. We always saved everything. We bought an old cultivator, an old disc. Well, you bought two of them. That way you had one for parts. And yeah, to a lot of people that is scrap sitting there, but no, to the person who's used to doing that kind of thing, that's how you operate. There's still a lot of people that do that. In fact, if you take a look in my backyard, there's still parts around for stuff that I'm going to need them someday. One other thing I want to get into is, and it has not been mentioned here at all, is the legal non-conforming issues. Now, I sent an article down from Gowling's law firm out of Ottawa. They did a report on the legal non-conforming, and I don't know how many people are aware of what a legal non-conforming is. It's basically grandfathered in. It's, let's see, I'll use the building code as an example. The building code was put in place in the mid-1960s. Does that mean once the building code act comes into place that anything built before that's got to go? No, they're grandfathered in or legal non-conforming. The building code actually is a living document. It changes excuse me, year to year to year. So somebody building something this week compared to somebody building something 5 years ago, the one 5 years ago was out of compliance with the building code. It's legal non-conforming. So this is what I think everybody needs to recognize with a property standards bylaw. Anything that is put in place now, everybody before this is legal non-conforming. So even if the wording in the bylaw is changed, it really doesn't affect the people that are already farming today. It's what's there is there. The only people it would really affect is a young farmer trying to get started, and it's really going to put chain binders on what he tries to do. That's basically what I had to say. Is there any questions on anything there so far? Oh, we're good to go. Does that mean I explained myself well? Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you for speaking. Just gonna ask the committee myself, are there any questions for Bob, regarding anything he said? And Bob, do you have anything else that you'd like to add to that?
Well, Stefanos here wants to talk here too on some things.
Okay.
He's more legal than I am. I'm just Joe Farmer.
I'm just a farmer. So again, I was a poultry farmer all my life up until 2011, until we got out of the business. I have obtained a paralegal diploma. I'm not licensed, of course, but I do work with a lot of lawyers in several different cases, from provincial offenses to municipality issues, bylaws, even down to criminal. But and I'd like to bring up the fact that I have a case law here. I have watched some previous meetings, and this is from the OMB. This is prior. I know we're at the land tribunals now, but I am, this may be able to give you some direction. And as a matter of fact, this was my own case back in 2011 when I didn't know any better. And they go out here and to cite, and I lost this case, and it goes on here to cite different uses. So uses such as welding or window framing, even engine repair and auto repair shop would be considered normal farm practice, also a secondary use to a farm. You could have shelving companies, furniture companies. Like I'm a poultry farmer. I know we needed shelving in our barns. So, that kind of thing is, again, goes towards secondary use to farming. And in this case here, it used to be a poultry farm, and it was gone from being a poultry farm and turned into a storage facility. But still, none of that mattered, and according to provincial policy statement, as long as that property eventually, even if it's no longer farming being the primary use, it's just a secondary use of storage, made no difference, because ultimately it will return back to farming. So I have all of that in here, and I'll provide you this yourselves so you can make copies or pass it around. I didn't think ahead of time, but so there's not only that, but there is a lot of different things you're going to have to consider here. Like as farmers, and many of which are here, and maybe yourselves are farmers. I don't know your background, but we practice great land stewardship. That's our business. That's our livelihood. We're not going to do something like, we're not going to take nuclear waste and dump it on our site or something like that, right? We want to protect our product. We have quite the duty when we are giving product going out, food supplies and whatever. Now, I want to bring up some different municipalities on and some of these things may cross into maybe developments, but they ultimately fall back to something like this. And why I say that is in Waynfleet, there was a development that was grandfathered back in 79 sometime. And they were now going to go ahead with it in 2012, 2013. And a counselor there was a group of people who were against the development, of course, because it's a rural municipality, town. And a counselor urged all these people to take it to the land tribunal, and they went to the tribunal and ultimately lost because they were already grandfathered. And again, this is where the legal non-conforming kind of stuff comes in. It was a development that was grandfathered years ago, so they could still do it. What they did, though, they worked with the municipality. And what they had done was they had a paper, so anybody who would purchase a home in that development, because it was around, pig farms, cow farms, poultry farms. So you always have your smells, your dust, your noise. And what they had done was whoever the homeowner was or the potential homeowner, the buyer, what they had done was they signed off on a document saying that they understood that these smells and noises are there. And then we have to look at color of right. So who was there first? And of course, the farms would have that color of right. So that's how that was settled that way. And, we may be having in this bylaw, there may be something like that. Maybe, somebody from Toronto sells a little small house and it goes for millions there. So they got some money. They say, heck, we want to retire out in the country. And they can buy a much bigger home out in the country for a lot less. And the next thing you know, you got a pig farm beside you or something. And then, all the complaints start. Actually, we were targeted like that exact very same thing during our time as a poultry farm. Now, I do have one more, and that was in Cayuga. It was one of our members who was having a hard time, and this was with a burn bylaw, and also a clean yards bylaw combined. And he ended up getting charged with offenses several times because he just kept burning brush when they'd clear land, stuff like that. And the problem was this bylaw didn't exempt farms, which it absolutely should. Any agricultural properties should be exempted from this type of stuff. And what had happened was I had made a meeting, an appointment. So with the fire chief and the bylaw officer who actually charged and fined him. And by the end of the meeting, we had a real very productive meeting. The charges were all dropped, all the fines were dropped, and what it was agreed to that the bylaw was coming up for review. So because it was coming up for review, instead of going through a very costly process both for the municipality and the farmer, they decided that they would get the farmers together and they would go to the review and get their input, because for some reason farmers are too busy. They got to get crops off the fields. There's a lot of stuff. They don't have time to come to these meetings and they don't really pay attention. So eventually that bylaw was changed to exempt farmers. Now I have also the town of West Lincoln a bylaw, and I'll supply you this at the end also. And they do not try to define anything, try to make any definitions for normal farm practice, because the municipalities simply cannot under Section 14.1 of the Municipal Act. It prevents municipalities from interfering with provincial or federal legislation or instrument of the Crown. So their hands would be tied there. So what they done here is they just simply made it so that anything under farm practices is exempt. So it's exempting the farms. And one more thing here is on normal farm practices, Practices Protection Board. They have a guide here for normal farm practices, and I'll supply it with this also. And maybe this may be able to help you all guide what you're going to do, or maybe no bylaw at all. The problem is, and it says right here, So it explains about the board and the FPPA and their reasoning for this being created is to protect farmland and farm production, food production. And it is there in order to not hinder, and they specifically state that it does not hinder the farms. So I'm not a fan of bylaws, but some cases they are required, and in some cases they're not. I've seen several cases, even cases I've been involved in, where there's several bylaws that are saying that they do not need any warrants or anything like that, and they can enter any time. That simply does not hold true for the fact that there's the Canadian Constitution. We have that issue. There's they require to have warrants even in the FPPA and other acts. It'll simply tell you that if entry is denied, then there has to be a process, a proper process, where they will have to approach a JP and present them with evidence of, harm to the environment, which another case I was involved in with Conservation Authority, because it was a dirt mound 2 foot high and about 2 foot wide. They went in with no warrant and attempted to claim that it was an emergency, because that is when you would not require a warrant. And of course, that argument was completely ignored because it would not be an imminent damage or dangers to the environment or persons. So we have to be very careful with what you do. The other problem with bringing a bylaw in where you do not exempt farms is, if everybody's going to be fighting with each other, there's neighbor disputes constantly going on. I've noticed, I'm even aware of one that's going on here. And even if that bylaw came into effect again, as Bob has brought up with the legal non-conforming, I do have a case here, and it would be this is RV Pickles. And again, this is coming down to legal non-conforming. And what had happened is Mr. Pickles had built a dock and had no building permit. And it was some 13 months later, he was charged for building without a permit. Well, a municipality is statute barred. After 1 year, they cannot bring an action. So if somebody builds something and a year passes, well, that's it. And then it becomes legal non-conforming. One more thing would be the bylaw. Once it comes into effect, and I believe in the Municipal Act, it even states that bylaws are not retroactive, so they cannot go back. And everything that you have right now is as it is. So where I see is a lot of potential for conflict between neighbors, neighbor disputes, urban versus rural. And I notice ACW is a huge rural area. There is urban also, but it's a very large rural area and a lot of farming. So this would have a potential of disputes happening, and municipalities and farmer alike. Are you going to spend hundreds of thousands in just court cases? And it will really affect where money could be going to infrastructure, and it can affect the farms, the businesses here. Maybe some can't afford to go through this, and it may close down. It can have quite a bit of an impact on economic growth or the economy of the tax or the municipality and the tax base and everything else. So it could be very damaging to both farmers and municipality alike, because money could be going to infrastructure or other things that would be needed. And I would suggest that again, ultimately, I would stray against even a bylaw doing that. And in the alternative, that if there is one created, that it make farms exempt, and that would be all that I'd have to say for now, unless later on there's anything that needs to come forward.
If I may, I've just got a couple little things I should have added in there. Farms aren't exempt from everything. Just because they're exempt from the property standards does not mean they do not have to abide by environmental issues or anything else. So I didn't remember that that was one of the concerns of the previous meeting. That yeah, it's as far as machinery or whatever outside, that is a normal farm practice. But if there is something environmentally impacted, yes, there are still ways and means to do that. That's why the Minister of Environment is around. So yeah, any other thing like that, the farms are not exempt from. But yeah, I did want to make that point.
Yeah, and one more thing that I forgot, which I do believe it's important because it was mentioned at a previous meeting, and that was they were speaking about manure being spread out on the fields under the Nutrient Management Act and the Farm Food Production Protection Act. Sometimes where farms are required to have them contained or stored, especially in the winter months, there are exemptions where sometimes that storage is full. So they are allowed to go and dump onto the field during the winter. And I believe that was one of the things that I wanted to make clear to you because I did hear it come up in the previous meeting. So that's all. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Well, thank you so much for coming in and speaking. Does any members of the committee have any questions for either of these gentlemen? Dan, please.
Yeah, good presentation. I'm a farmer myself, so I can relate to a few things you said. One being, buying used farm equipment to support your current operation. I think I get that myself. And I want to say I believe a lot of farmers in ACW do follow normal farming practices, like meaning they do well, they do the right thing. And you're right, ACW is a very large area. But I just have a question. What do you guys say to a group of homeowners, they have country homes, quite nice homes, or even farmers that have nice farms. They're well kept, good operations, but there's one farm in the community that has a bunch of garbage, maybe some burnt campers and a bunch of garbage, stuff like that. And the owners aren't around. What? How do you suggest to manage that property?
Oh,
Thank you.
You want to do that one?
yeah, I'll do that one. I'd be happy to do that one. So I'm well aware of that situation. I've been there. I've been with a couple of lawyers. This is an ongoing legal issue. And as a matter of fact, your advertisement of this going out there, I do believe they had some photos of that particular place you're speaking of, and that may also get you in hot water because that is private property and there was no permission by the owner to take that. So could be a constitutional issue there too. But so there's a problem right there off the hop. But that kind of an area, I have been to the property, I have seen it. It is a plant. It's a secondary use, and this is why I'll provide you this case law because that is a secondary use for what they carry on, what kind of business they carry on there. I've seen the equipment out there, sure. I've seen some of the things that people are trying to classify as being rubbish or rubble or trash, whatever they want to call it, actually is not. It was explained to me what those things were and what they're for and what they're used for. The barn you're speaking about that was burned down, okay. He can, that's going to be up to him to decide on what he's going to do. If he's going to, take it down completely, I don't know. I haven't had that discussion with him, but I can have that discussion with him, not a problem. I don't know if he's going to rebuild, which would be an option. And the problem with removing a structure completely like that is you may have to go with development charges again, or you may, if you take it down completely, you may want to keep a piece of that, which you can rebuild, keeping a section so you don't have to go through the permit and everything else like that again. And this actually is a classic example of neighbors fighting neighbors and then trying to bring a bylaw in, which will have absolutely zero effect whatsoever. And it's just going to end up getting into the legal system, and it's going to end up being a court battle between ACW and a farmer because of a bunch of other people. So that's the stuff you have to be careful of. That's what I'm speaking of. And you know, it's my understanding that's only supposed to be 3 season there, but a lot of people have stayed 4 season. I have seen a lot of the documentation, so, and I have gone over it with a lawyer and everything. So how to answer that question? Just, you know, you should put due diligence, and if you see some neighborly dispute going on, you should exercise caution and not get stuck in the middle of it, because the next thing you know, you're in the middle of a court battle, which you shouldn't be to begin with.
I'm going to add a little bit to that. I helped out with a property that's just about exactly what you're talking about. Is there was refuse there that really wasn't anything to do with the farm. Property standards came in on the farm, and he wanted to bring dumpsters in, completely take everything. And we did sit down and we did go through with the person that, okay, the trucks he has there are the same as the trucks he uses on the farm. Yes, they had to stay. Yeah, the old Subaru that he's got out back, well, probably should be gone. You know, the tires that he saved for the farm wagons, yeah, that's a farm purpose. But yeah, we did have to sit down, and we actually sat down in the municipal office in that area and said, okay, this is what he's got. Maybe this should be gone. But yeah, we sat down and went through it to say, okay, that is a normal farm practice. No, you should be doing something with this. And a lot of the time, just by sitting down and going through things, that's how we solved that problem. Is yes, this isn't a farm use for that. It should go. You know, can we have so much time to get rid of it? This feller was, I guess, a hoarder is about the best way to put him. And yeah, he did clean up, and after that, everything was great. There was one instance, so in this case, where the bylaw officer just sort of walked in when nobody was around, walked back through the fields. And this is something very important that I think we should really be addressing. Is a couple of years ago now, this avian flu virus got around, and down in the States are saying it's now going into cattle. And so I did tell the property standards bylaw officer, I don't really think you should be walking on private property without somebody there. You know, I consider now every farm a biohazard area, that you should be giving people notice that you're going to have something go on there. And that is something that I stressed to him. And yes, he was very aware then that, okay, maybe I shouldn't be doing this.
Poultry farms have
Yes,
biohazard
just because it's not signed, I think most people should really consider a farm a biosecurity area now too.
Well, thank you for that response. Dan, if you have another question, go ahead. I just want to remind everybody to to keep things in general. We don't want to narrow down on any specific situations.
Yep, I'll keep it brief. Just as a follow-up, I'm pretty sure we're talking about two separate properties. The one I was referencing I don't believe there's any photos in our minutes of any kind, but I appreciate your thoughts. So thank you.
Who would like to take the clerk or?
Yeah.
I would like to thank very much, actually, the council for getting this working group going. I've seen too many cases where a council will just pass a bylaw without really looking at the whole implications. And the fact this council set up a working group to study this actually bodes very well. And I'm thankful that we had the opportunity to address a few things and participate in it. So thank yous very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both for coming in and speaking to that. Moving on to item 5.2. It is a report brought back from the clerk regarding property standards complaints on agriculture lands and other municipalities. I'm sure we've all had a chance to look it over, and if we did have any questions for the clerk or looking for any clarification on that report, now would be the time to bring those forward. I'm not seeing any. So moving on to item 5.3. That is the property standards public consultation and community engagement plan update. We have a few items to consider on here. I'm going to open it up to the committee to, I know there's some dates that we have to look at, and it also dovetails into item 5.4 that's coming up next regarding the location of an open house, should we decide to go that route. So I'm fine with looking at both these items kind of simultaneously because one goes into the other. And I know further down we have a draft survey as well. So I'm going to open it up. Going to open it up to the committee if anyone would like to comment on anything in this plan update. Chris, please.
I've been looking into the Dungan Agricultural Hall. I think would probably be about the best. It's in the middle of the township. I know it's holds more people. I don't know, for a location, I would think myself that might be the best location, but not saying it has to be.
Do any other members have any suggestions for location when it comes to the open house? I also have to agree with Chris. I think Dungannon is a fairly suitable spot. I'm happy to see that Lucknow was an option on there as well. However, if we're trying to keep things centralized closer to central in the township, I think Dungannon would be the best option in my opinion. But obviously we're going to need the committee to approve that. Looking through the items on community engagement, the open house public information session, mailed information flyer, which has already been sent out. The municipal website has an information page. I believe that's up and running. Yes. The e-newsletter, social media channels, Facebook and Twitter, community kiosk, press release in local newspapers and radio, and mailed postcard to all ACW property owners and survey. So a few of those items we do have to finalize in today's meeting. So Florence, I know we were just kind of talking about the location. How should we handle this jumping between two items?
Well, I think if you kind of decide, I think if we decide on when an open house would happen, based on how long you want the survey to go out for. And then I would suggest that the open house happen around the same time, if not a little bit before the survey closes. That way, once the survey closes, you have all your feedback needed to proceed. So that's kind of the suggested path.
Okay, so looking for time frame for when we'd like to see these things come forward and kind of get wrapped up with. So I guess starting with a survey then kind of would be what we would think. Looking at committee members for suggestions and whatnot as to timelines we'd like to see and stick with. Dan, please.
It's tough one to answer. And where I'm going with this is it's almost April. A lot of farming community is going to definitely by May 1st be geared up and want to be planting corn and beans and all sorts of things. Second half of April, similar, fertilizer and things like that. We're almost the 1st of April, so I honestly don't know how to pick a date. It's sooner the better, but at the same time, we're going to be really busy in the field soon. So, and I also have a couple thoughts regarding the survey as well when the time comes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. Things are going to get really busy. So keeping it open long enough to allow, everybody in the township to be able a chance to answer the survey and get information back to us. I can't say I have any particular suggestion on this way. I'm going to kind of look to the committee for time frame for this with regards to the survey, opening it up, and then obviously the commenting period. I personally would like to see the commenting period opened right through up until the open house, I suppose. Mark, please.
I know I'm not a committee member, but I'm just, I know at the beginning of the process, I indicated that we can pump the brakes at any time. I know when Dan said about farming, and I agree 100% with that. So I'm just saying this out loud in case everyone was afraid of saying it. There's no urgency to this. If we had to pump the brakes because spring's just around the corner, we can reconvene again in the fall, or when the new council comes in, they can make a decision moving forward too as well. Because I know that the timelines aren't working as that we initially thought, and I think engaging the public at appropriate time, it would be good. And I'm not sure whether we're getting into the time where it's not appropriate. So that's just my comments for the committee to think about.
I guess I might have a question for Kelly. If we opened up the online survey, is there a time frame that it has to be closed by, or how long can we keep that open for an extended period of time? Would it be any interest of the committee to open that up? Obviously, we have to approve the survey further down in the minutes, but open it up soon and then leave it open throughout the duration of the summer and close it in the fall and see the kind of input. I mean, that would give everybody in the community a number of months to get to that survey right past spring planting and whatnot and into the summer. So I'm going to ask if the committee would be interested in that, and then we could set a date when the survey would close. Yeah, it kind of spring kind of seems to blend right into fall for everybody. Getting busy and then with planting and then right into harvest. So I don't, I'm kind of thinking August, but maybe that isn't appropriate. I again look to committee to see if for a closing date I should mention. Wayne?
Okay, thank you. How long is too long to have these things open? Like with the short-term rentals, how long were they open for that?
Yeah, so the short-term rental committee survey, it was open for 4 or 5 weeks. We do find that there's an uptake in the beginning. Then if you advertise it a little bit more, then there's uptake. Like it won't, like, to me, the shorter the window, the better in terms of getting feedback. But I mean, that's at the committee's call.
Please.
So I'm thinking like month of April, like it's not crazy busy. I know like it all depends on the year too, but I don't know what everybody else thinks on that, but
Yeah, I'm not opposed to that. Sorry, Wayne, go ahead if you were going to say something. I'm not opposed to that. The only thing that Florence just kind of sparked in my brain was if we did put it out for an extended period, we could have some refresher messages out there on our social media platforms. Um, we could put out a few refreshers throughout the summer just to draw attention back to it, some different posts and whatnot. But again, it's kind of at our discretion. So if do people think we should be just keeping it open for the month of April and closing it at that? I know, as Dan said, things get busy and all of a sudden April 1st turns into the end of April quick. So Chris, please.
I kind of like your idea of leaving it open like that because there'll be another tax notice go out September, I'm guessing, August. So if it was open over the summer and then the comments came in, we would know how people reacted and maybe a newsletter could go out then. Type deal. So.
And with that being said too, sorry, Florence. With that being said too, if we left it open until just after that last tax notice was sent out, we could do another refresher and a reminder on that tax notice to say, hey, maybe a week, 2 weeks until the survey's closing. Now's your chance to get it in if you haven't already. Florence?
At this point, my suggestion would be that the survey be opened up. It doesn't cost a lot to do that, to have it open. Not schedule an open house at this point. Allow the survey to close, say, August 31st. And then after the close of that, the committee can meet and decide if they'd like to proceed with an open house in the fall. And then using that feedback together.
Dan, please.
Yeah, I would support that idea. And the reason is I had a number of reasons, but one being, and it was going to get to my survey, but we have the Amish community. Someone brought to my attention here this past week is how do we get the Amish community involved to see, because I know they're concerned regarding the letter that went out at the tax bill, and I know they have some questions and concerns. They don't have Facebook and internet like we all do. So this, I think the extension on the survey would give them time to access it and be advised, or be aware of it. So just a perspective that I think would be in favor.
I'm going to make a suggestion and definitely shut me down if it's a little much of a reach. The survey that we're suggesting is kind of online specific. I'm going to look to Kelly for clarification on that.
There are paper copies available at the office that people can fill out.
Okay, that's great. That's what I was hoping to hear. I was worried if it was just online specific, if we could have paper copies made up and have some type of a handout station here at the office, or maybe closer to St. Helens or something like that. So I'm happy with that. So I'll ask the committee, I guess, if we approve the survey further down when we get to it, if we'd be interested in opening that up right away and keeping it open for the remainder of the summer. We'll say 2 weeks past after we mail out the last tax notice, and then have a reminder and a follow-up on that newsletter and tax notice that the survey will be closing shortly thereafter. And obviously we don't have specific nailed down dates on that as of yet. I don't believe when tax notices will be mailed out. So that we're going to kind of have to leave to the discretion of staff when it comes to actual pinpointing dates. But I'm going to ask if the committee is in favor of that. Doug, please.
I think there's going to be more comments after comments come in. So there's going to be a lot of people responding to somebody else's comments. And so I'd like to have some kind of intermediate time when we capture these comments, and then everybody can see what they're dealing with. And then there'll be more comments after that. If we wait till September, it'll be Christmas before we anywhere near closing this committee off. And there'll be an election for new councillors. You know, I feel like we've been gathering information, but we haven't been making any decisions to date. And we've been at this since January. So we're already 3 months in.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, you know, have an intermediate stuff before we finish to see where we're going, to give still people, allow them some time for feedback.
Yeah, Florence, you had your.
Yeah, I think when council directed the committee to do the review, you know, there was a time frame kind of established. They were hoping that from January to April that this could be dealt with, that a recommendation would come from the committee for, say, the first or second meeting in April. I think once the committee got going, it was, you know, there was a lot of, they realized that there's a lot of information to look through and a lot of things to consider. So I think that, you know, hindsight, I think a 4-month window on that was kind of a little bit short-sighted, likely. Further, I think the window that you're looking for, and I know that, you know, sometimes a committee, maybe there will be a turnover in members of council or whatnot. I think the window that you're looking for would happen at the close of the survey. The survey gets, the results get published. The committee looks at those comments. The public has an opportunity to look at those comments as well, because they would be published. And then the open house happens. And so I think the window that you're looking for is there. I agree. I think it would be nice to kind of close it up, but with the amount of information that has been presented, I think it's worth taking a little bit more time.
Doug, do you have any? Yeah, I get it from both directions. I understand. If we push it and try to get it wrapped up in spring, we might not get as much feedback as we'd like to see. If we draw it out, well, then Christmas is around the corner. So I see there's problems both directions. My only thought was with leaving it open for the summer that would give as much time as possible to gather that information back, and then try to plan maybe an open house late in the fall, depending on the information that we gather back from the survey. I very well could be wrong on that. I likely am. So I guess, what is the committee's final decision on this, the survey timeline and opening it up for comments in the survey and whatnot, and then bring that to a close? Are we okay with leaving it open for the duration of the summer? Chris is in agreement. Dan? Glenn, please.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think it's a good idea to initiate the survey, say the 1st of April, just as a given date, because there's a lot of interest in this right now, and I think we'd get a lot of respondents, which is what we want. And then, yes, to continue it on. And the tax notice, Mark, what date would that go out, please?
Probably the 2nd or 3rd week in August. So we could wrap it up by the end of August or the 1st of September.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that. And that would be a reminder when that tax notice goes out that the survey would end in a specific time. And I think it's important to set a specific time as to when it would end. And then we could have an open house, you know, be it in, you know, October, whatever. That would just be a thought. But I think to initiate it the 1st of April would be a suggestion.
Yeah, I would agree with that also. Initiate it the 1st of April, obviously approve it further down in the agenda here, and then just swiping through the calendar. If we were to aim to close it, it really depends on when that tax notice does head out. But if we were to aim to close it, say by the end of the 2nd week of September, and then have that refresher in that tax notice, I mean, I think that would be fair to gather as much input as possible. And at this point, we would be leaving the open house on the table to make that decision at a later date. So if all the committee's good with that, I see a lot of nods around the room. Do we have to make that into a formal?
No, I think we just need some direction. So I'm gonna suggest that we open up the survey April 1st and that it closed on September, my calendar's not behaving. September 11th, Friday, September 11th. That would be the end of the second week.
Yeah, I'd be in agreement with that if all the other committee members are as well. And I know that item 5.3 got busy, and Florence, if there is something I missed in there, I don't believe I did though.
I think the survey piece is the most important part, and then I guess we'll get into that, but finalizing those things are what we really need to do today.
Mm-hmm. So if that's the case, sorry, Mark.
Yeah, so just to confirm that we would send out those postcards as part of that whole engagement thing. So the postcards, everyone will get a postcard in the mail and they'll know that it's online. And for those that can't facilitate the online, we have paper copies available.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Moving down into item 5.4, obviously that's the locations for the open house. I think it would be kind of premature to decide on a location at this time if we don't know if we are going ahead with that or not. It really depends on how we analyze that feedback that comes back from the survey. So if the committee's okay with that, I'm going to skip over 5.4 for today, and we can take a look at the draft survey and postcard in item 5.5. I'll just start things off. I was looking through the survey questions. One thing that kind of caught my attention, this is pretty minuscule, but the map with the different areas, area 1, 2, area 3S, and area 3N. I wasn't able to catch that right away. If we could, I would just make a suggestion that switch it to area 3 and area 4, and then keep the color codes the same. It simplified it when I was looking at the map. I had to take a minute to really look at that and narrow it down. I know it doesn't make much of a difference geographically, but that's one suggestion I had. One more thing, the first couple of questions on the survey, which best describes your property and how long have you lived in the township? I don't think it would be unfair to also ask if the person filling out the survey is a seasonal resident or a full-time resident. I don't think that's an unfair question, but I'm going to look to committee to see if that's also of any interest. Dan, please.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That was the first thing on my list, was to suggest which best describes your property. The fourth bullet, it says settlement area, villages, and lakeshore. I would propose making it a fifth bullet, villages or lakeshore. And the purpose of that is, if you check off lakeshore or village, it might mean you're in Dungannon or Belgrave or on the lakeshore. And it'd be nice to know if you could break it down when the survey is done, if the person that has the comment is lakeshore or a village. So that's my thought. I'd like to split those two into two different categories. That's all.
I'm also in agreement with that, and I'm just going to look around the room to make sure the rest of the committee is good with that. Chris is, and Doug is as well. So, are there any other areas of the survey? I was very pleased with how the survey came out and the questions in it. I think it really grasps the information we're trying to get from the public. But I'm going to look around the room and see if there's anybody that has any suggestions on changing anything or adding anything to that survey. Not seeing anything around the table. So I believe there was 3 changes that were proposed then. The area 1, 2, 3, and 4 instead of 3S and 3N. Seasonal or full-time resident, and then breaking that village and lakeshore area up as well. So if we have clarification. Yes, Wayne?
So the next question kind of resolves that your rural resident or settlement area, right? So don't see why you need to have that in the other one, but so you want like seasonal in there and with settlement area? Is that, maybe it was a dumb question on my part, but
no, I was just meaning as a separate question as a whole.
Okay, all right.
Diesel resident.
I agree with
sorry,
that.
I should have
Okay.
clarified that as well. Florence, did you have something to add there? That was okay. So with that being said, like scrolling through the rest of the questions, I was happy with them, but I do want to see approval from the rest of the committee before we give this survey the go ahead, and then staff can initiate. Chris, please.
No, I think it was really well done, actually. It looks good.
Okay, if that's the case and everybody's happy with it, just around the room, everybody looks to be good. So we'll go ahead with that. That would come out on April 1st, it sounds like. And then that brings us to item 5.6, which is direction to staff. Obviously, at this time, if we open up the survey for such a long period of time, I don't think we can do much until we see these results come back, unless there's anything else that the committee wants to see come forward with regards to reports or guest speakers or anything along those lines. I kind of feel that we're at a halt until we gather this information and come back and take a look at it. Glenn, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. One item I had that I wondered would be beneficial for the committee, and that would be to have our county planner come to a meeting and explain the different zonings and what they are. And I wonder if that would be beneficial information for the committee to be knowledgeable of. That would just be a question for yourself and the committee.
Yeah, I think that would be beneficial just to hear it come from a person and not necessarily a text can make things a little bit easier for people to understand for sure. Are you thinking during the time between now and the end of the survey, or bring that back in the fall when the survey comes back to us as well?
Yeah, I'm really flexible. It would be at a future meeting, and if we're not going to meet again till fall, it can wait for that. I just think it would be beneficial for the knowledge of the committee.
I think that's totally fair. Florence?
I would wait until the survey comes, because then we can just, we let the survey go through, have the comments, and then once we have those things, then you can gear up again, and then get clarification.
Doug, please.
Curtis, so the survey will be online, and then any resident in the ACW can come to the office after April 1st and pick up a hard copy?
That is my understanding.
Okay.
But yes, Florence is also. Mark, please.
Just keep in mind, April 1st was just next Thursday, so. You know,
What's on
so
Thursday?
April 1st.
Oh,
So
we don't want to.
it'll be around there, yes, yeah.
After April 1st.
I'm going to ask Florence, do you feel it appropriate to, at this time, if we're just going to be analyzing the information coming back and alongside with the planner coming to talk to us at the fall meeting, I guess, other than setting a date for that meeting, do you think it's appropriate to add anything else to that meeting at this time?
Not at this time. I think there will be lots to talk about seeing the survey. And then if the committee would like, we can kind of put, a meeting, having the planner come to explain the different zonings as part of that. But we can call that meeting like later. We don't have to set that date right now.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, that sounds good with me. If the rest of the committee is all good with that, I guess it would be just a matter of waiting to see the information come back in the end of August, September, and the next meeting would be at that time, and that's when we can really start to dive into this and gather that information. So if that's the case, I guess we're not making a next meeting at this time as of yet. So this brings us to adjournment, and I need a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Chris and seconded by Wayne. That the Agriculture Property Standards Working Group does now adjourn to meet again at an unknown date, at an unknown time, or at the call of the chair. All in favor of that? That passes through. And thanks everybody for coming tonight.